After a long business trip, I returned home to find my husband arrogantly lounging in the living room, declaring, "I've filed for divorce. As compensation, I'm taking the house." The living room was a mess, strewn with garbage, and the kitchen, with its unwashed dishes, reeked. Despite anticipating it, the state of the house was appalling. Finally fed up with him, I coolly replied, "Fine." He seemed surprised, expecting resistance, but quickly relieved. "B," exclaimed with a hop in his step. "Really? I'm not leaving this place. You're the one who should leave." I watched him with cold eyes, secretly smirking inside. Those who toy with people's emotions deserve to suffer. "My name is Ashley. I'm 37 and run a trendy matchmaking business. I started my business at 25 and have been matching many couples. Caught up in the thrill of work, I neglected my own marriage prospects. By 35, I was almost content with being unmarried. That's when I met Matt, my current husband. Our meeting was purely coincidental, seated next to him and a friend at a restaurant. We ended up drinking together and hit it off. "Wow, Ashley, you run your own business? That's awesome." He kept praising, and I, proud of my work, didn't mind. I hadn't dated younger men before, but when he asked for my contact, I gave it to him. Our relationship started casually. I felt comfortable and could be myself. He was also good at acting needy, making me want to indulge him when he looked up with clasped hands. I wondered if this is what men enjoyed, being relied upon. I used to want a manly, leading partner, but as I grew in my career, I realized that this kind of relationship could work too. After a year of dating, he proposed. "Me, older by 5 years? Are you sure?" I blurted out. "Age doesn't matter. You don't look older." He sweet-talked me, but then he confessed something troubling. "If you dislike the idea, it's okay to decline the proposal." With puppy dog eyes and a sad face, my mentor instincts were stirred. I assured him, "We are going to be together, so whatever happens, we'll overcome it together. That's what marriage is, right?" His face instantly brightened. "Ashley, you really are wonderful," he said, taking my hand. I felt a warm kindness towards him. Looking back, I realized that was exactly what he had wanted. I later learned his confession was about being divorced with unpaid compensation, leaving him broke. I was shocked to learn that Matt was divorced, something I didn't know before. It turns out he apparently had a very selfish ex-wife. She promised to divorce him if he paid her compensation. Sympathizing with his plight, considering his ex-wife's apparent greed, I reassured him, "It's okay, we'll get through this together." Helping others can be gratifying. He was grateful, promising to be devoted after marriage. However, it didn't take long to realize his promises were empty. To avoid embarrassing him for his lack of funds, I suggested living in my ancestral home, soon to be vacated by my parents for a more convenient city apartment. When Matt saw my parents' house, he fell in love with it at first sight. "I can't believe I get to live in such a magnificent house," he exclaimed, overjoyed. "I've kept it in my name. Don't worry about it. It was meant to be my inheritance anyway." He was very grateful to me, and a new life started. However, as soon as our new life began, Matt's sloppy habits became apparent. He wouldn't throw trash in a bin, left his clothes everywhere, left the bathroom light on, and no matter how many times I taught him, He wouldn't clean up after using the bath. It was endless, like living with a 5-year-old. I hate messy rooms, so initially I cleaned up after him, but gradually I couldn't keep up. Hey, enough is enough. I told you to throw garbage in the bin. I scolded him sharply, and he sulked like a child and retreated to his room. How unpleasant he was. I wanted to scream. Who promised to devote himself? At least at the beginning, he could have pretended to be tidy, but his sloppiness was so natural to him that he didn't even try to hide it. Of course, he didn't do any housework. No matter how busy I was with work, he'd ask, "Hey, is dinner ready? I'm hungry." When I sadly asked about contributing to the living expenses, he'd make a sad face saying, "I'm still paying compensation." I started to suspect him. Would a regular employee like him really be burdened with such high compensation? Yet, he asked for money without doubt. "Can you lend me some cash? I'm in a bind after treating my juniors." At first, I complied, but as he became too dependent, I asked him to show me the household accounts. "Don't you trust me? I'm shocked you think that way," he'd say, looking hurt. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. One day, I said firmly, "Actually, I'm not earning much either. I'm barely managing the expenses. So don't expect any pocket money." He, visibly disappointed, turned his back on me, saying, "Oh." His attitude after that was terrible. Far from improving his habits, he started drinking every night, messing up the house, and increasingly not coming home. When I complained to my mother that this marriage was a mistake, she, who had been against the marriage from the start, said, "Try to endure for a year. You need to make an effort to get along. Then we can talk." She added, as a marriage consultant, "It wouldn't look good for you to divorce so quickly." Probably this too was part of Matt's plan. I felt so frustrated I wanted to cry. I cursed myself for not seeing through him, but it was too late now. As a small consolation, I wrote my name on a divorce application and kept it in the bedroom drawer. Every time I felt angry, I'd look at it and grit my teeth, thinking, after a year. A year passed. I had to go on a business trip for about a week to open a new branch. Matt, unusually cheerful, saw me off. "It must be tough. Have a good trip." Despite a bad feeling, I completed the trip and returned home. There, Matt was lounging in the living room. "You were thinking of divorcing me? I found the divorce papers in the bedroom. After saying we'd overcome together, you're terrible for thinking of leaving so soon." After that, before I could explain, he interrupted, "Don't make excuses. You don't know how shocked I was." Showing his usual sad face, he boldly stated, "I've filed for divorce. I'll take the house as compensation." Exhausted from my business trip, it took me a moment to comprehend the situation. Stunned, I asked, "You filed the divorce?" Thinking I was troubled, he smirked. "Yeah, probably. Who else would marry a nagging old maid like you?" As I braced to respond, the messy, garbage-filled living room and a foul-smelling kitchen caught my eye. I was dismayed at the thought of cleaning it up. If I divorce, I won't have to deal with this. Keeping a solemn face, I asked, "About compensation?" "Of course. I heard you were a businesswoman, but turns out you're broke. This is practically fraud." Matt admitted, without any need to hide, that his marriage was purely for money. I felt the last of my feelings for him vanish. Furthermore, he said, "It's also for the mental anguish I suffered from you over the past year. doing household chores, cleaning up, keeping a household budget. That's an invasion of privacy. Think about a man's position. If I were the breadwinner and he was a homemaker, I think these would be normal expectations. But he adamantly claimed to be the victim. I realized there was no reasoning with him and simply replied, "Fine, okay." He seemed surprised I didn't object. "Really? I can have the house?" I firmly told him, if it meant cutting ties with you, the house is a small price to pay. He looked hurt for a moment but quickly recovered. A woman who can't get a man spouting nonsense. "Fine, really, I'm not leaving." "You're the one who should leave." He then excitedly searched for movers and thrust a phone number at me. "Call them now." I shrugged. "No need to rush. I'll leave soon. I have a moving company through work. I'll use them." I contacted them on my phone, and fortunately they had a cancellation for the next day. Matt seemed pleased with himself, gleefully saying, "Can't wait to not see your face anymore. I feel relieved." He was clueless about what awaited him. I had to suppress my laughter at his ignorance. I moved my furniture and belongings to a storage unit, starting a hotel life while searching for a new place. It was a lifestyle I'd wanted to try. After transferring the house title, I forgot about Matt and enjoyed a luxurious life. Returning to a spotlessly cleaned room every day and dining in bars and restaurants, I recovered from the business trip fatigue and was motivated to work hard again. 5 days after leaving the house, I checked my private phone to find 100 missed calls from Matt. I hadn't been checking my personal phone due to work. I called back my parents to apologize, and after learning why Matt called, I decided to ignore his calls. It was all within my expectations. Later, unable to bear it, he came to my office, shouting at the reception, "Hey, get boss out here." He was restrained by security. It was embarrassing to think he was my ex-husband. As a marriage consultant, it's a terrible look to fail in marriage. Realizing this was also part of his calculation, I suppressed the urge to click my tongue in annoyance. Reluctantly, I informed him of the hotel where I was staying and decided to send him back. When he visited the hotel at night, he was shocked. "What's with this fancy hotel? Aren't you broke?" I just didn't have money to waste on someone who shirks on living expenses and plays around. When I nonchalantly said that, he bit his lip and asked, "How much do you really earn a year?" Thinking it didn't matter anymore, I said about $300,000. He was stunned. $300,000? Jumping out of his chair. "It's none of your business anymore. We are strangers now, so why you are here?" As I tried to continue, he hesitantly produced a document. It was a land lease contract. The lessor was my parents. This was sent to the house. I can't pay $5,000 a month. Hearing his shaky voice, I burst into laughter. "Of course you can't. I said I'd give you the house, but I never said I'd give you the land." He watched me laughing and clenched the document in frustration. The house was in my name, but the land has always belonged to my parents. I chuckled while explaining to him. "So I allowed you to live there rent-free. But when a stranger like you decides to stay, I have to charge rent, right? If you live there without permission, that's real estate usurpation, isn't it?" Matt banged the table in frustration. "This is a trap. It's outrageous to say, pay up or leave." I pretended to be troubled. "Well, what can I do?" and exaggeratedly furrowed my brow. Matt grumped strangely. If it's too much, why not sell the house? You don't need to be attached to the place, right? When I jokingly suggested this, Matt, having consulted a real estate agent, ranted, "It's too old, 70 years. They said it won't sell. They suggested demolishing it and selling the land. But the land isn't mine." I laughed. "Well, that's expected and nobody would buy it, especially if they have to pay for demolition." They said the same thing. Good location, but there are other properties. Originally, my parents planned to sell the land after demolition. When I got married and wanted to live there, they sold it to me cheaply. I alone had thought about renovating it in the future. In short, he could either continue paying $5,000 in rent for the house I gave him or pay about $20,000 for demolition to relinquish it. It's 1,420 square feet. Basically, he ended up with a house that cost him a fortune just to own. Realizing that scheme, he bombarded me with calls. He ruffled his hair. "Why didn't you tell me? I'm in such a mess because of this. I didn't know. You asked for it yourself. I didn't want it that much. It's her fault." He suddenly stopped, realizing what he said. I laughed. "Oh, Becky, right? She's remarried, hasn't she?" His face went pale. "How do you know that name?" "I heard from a friend that you were dating her even before marrying me." I took out a detective agency's report from my bag and showed him a photo of him with Becky. He grabbed it in panic. "No use taking it. I have the data." Matt seemed confused. "Please, keep this a secret." "What is he talking about?" "I can't keep this secret. Both of you will be sued for compensation next week, so be prepared." Matt gasped for air like a fish out of water. I wondered how he'd come up with the money for both the demolition and the affair compensation. Then he blamed Becky. It's her fault. She wanted to live in that fancy neighborhood, saying it would add prestige. I looked at the report. Prestige, huh? Maybe she thought living there would make her favorite guy treat her nicely. I showed him a photo of Becky and a guy in a dubious street. He stared at it, dumbfounded. "But she's a rich lady." "Indeed, a fine lady, working at a nightclub." Matt couldn't sit properly and slumped to the floor, trembling. "So, that's why she stopped contacting me when I mentioned not being able to live in the house." "Ah, she thought you were rich." "Of course, since you spent your entire salary on fun. And the story about paying compensation for the divorce was a lie too." He was speechless, realizing I knew everything. Getting bored, I yawned. "Well, I need to rest." As I stood up, Matt shifted the table and knelt down. "I was wrong. Please, give me another chance. I won't cheat again and will do chores and cleaning properly." In a high-end hotel lobby, what a disgraceful scene. I was oddly disappointed and called the front desk. "Excuse me, this man is stalking me. Could you call the police?" Hearing police, Matt jumped up and ran away, screaming, "No, please, no." That should keep him away quite good. Later, I heard Matt divorced Vicky and took a loan for the demolition costs. He then supposedly joined or was forced onto a distant fishing vessel, and I don't know the details. As for me, I bought a new apartment in LA and am enjoying my elegant single life. At work, I receive grateful reports of many happy couples every day. I sometimes wonder if I used all my marriage life on my job, But seeing happy couples makes me feel joyful too. It's not a bad life.